He paid $5,000 for his seat, but his arrogance was about to cost him everything. He looked at the quiet, older black man sitting across from him and saw a charity case. He saw someone who didn't belong. He told him, "Guys like you can't afford this." What he didn't know, and what was about to destroy his entire life, was that he wasn't just talking to a passenger. He was talking to the man who invented the very system that made his entire multi-million-dollar career possible. The hum of San Francisco International Airport's Terminal 3 was a familiar kind of chaos. It was the sound of rolling luggage, anxious final calls, and the self-important chatter of people who believed their destination was the only one that mattered. Richard "Rick" Stanton stood in the Group 1 boarding lane for the 8 a.m. non-stop to JFK, and he was the living embodiment of that self-importance. His suit was a custom-tailored Brioni, the color of a stormy sky, and it probably cost more than the economy flight he was so determined to avoid. His wrist bore the heavy, metallic glint of a new Audemars Piguet, a trophy from his last, record-breaking quarter. He was 38, but he carried himself with the impatient, entitled energy of a man who believed the world had been holding him back until 5 years ago. He was currently broadcasting his importance into a pair of white earbuds, his voice cutting through the terminal's din. "Greg, I'm telling you, it's handled," he said, too loudly. "The hyper route presentation is locked. Harrington is flying in on the later flight, so I've got time to prep the boardroom. These guys, this logistics conglomerate, they're dinosaurs. They're still using last-gen predictive routing. We're offering them prescient routing. They're going to eat it up." He paused, listening. "No, the deal isn't the problem. The problem is this flight. The SFO lounge was a zoo. Absolutely packed. Couldn't even get a quiet corner." He shifted his leather carry-on, the Navicore Solutions logo embossed on the tag, and tapped his foot. The priority line was moving, but not fast enough. The source of the delay, in his mind, was the man directly in front of him. This man was, in every conceivable way, Rick's opposite. He appeared to be in his late 70s, perhaps older. He was tall, but with a slight stoop in his shoulders that spoke of decades spent leaning over books or lab benches. He wore a simple, dark grey traveler's blazer, comfortable, clean, but unbranded. His pants were pressed slacks, and his shoes were comfortable, well-worn leather loafers. He held a physical, hardback book in his hand, its cover worn, the title obscured by his thumb. The Innovators. This was Dr. Elias Thorne. Elias was not in a hurry. He had learned, over a very long life, that hurrying to get on a plane only meant you had to wait longer on the plane. He simply waited his turn, his mind only partially on the line. He was thinking about the ionosphere, as he often did. He was thinking about how its fluctuating charge, its daily breath as it expanded and contracted, still introduced a nanosecond-level drag on signal transmission, and how a new generation of engineers was probably forgetting to account for it. "Sir? Your boarding pass?" The gate agent, a polite young woman named Olivia, prompted him. Elias looked up from his thoughts, blinking. "Ah, yes. My apologies." He reached into his breast pocket and produced his ticket. Rick Stanton let out an exaggerated sigh from behind him, loud enough for Elias to hear. "Come on, Gramps. Some of us have places to be." Elias did not turn around. He simply handed his pass to Olivia, who scanned it. "Thank you, Dr. Thorne. You're in 1C. Enjoy your flight," she said, with a warm smile. Elias nodded. "Thank you, Olivia. You have a peaceful day." He walked down the jet bridge, his old leather satchel in one hand, his book in the other. He didn't notice the look of complete, dismissive bewilderment on Rick Stanton's face. Rick stepped up, thrusting his phone at the scanner. "Dr. Thorne," he thought. like a college professor. 1C? He's in first. Rick boarded the aircraft and immediately felt a wave of relief. The calm, muted tones of the first-class cabin, the scent of polished leather and pre-departure coffee. He was greeted by Sarah, the lead flight attendant, a woman with kind eyes and the unflappable calm of a 20-year veteran. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Stanton. Can I take your coat?" "Thanks," Rick grunted, slipping into his seat. 1A. The coveted bulkhead. He immediately pulled out his laptop and his noise-cancelling headphones, a clear, "Do not disturb" sign to the world. A moment later, Dr. Elias Thorne arrived. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried grace. He looked at the overhead bin above 1A, which Rick had already half filled with his own carry-on and coat, placed sideways. "Excuse me, young man," Elias said, his voice a low, smooth baritone. "I believe my bag also needs to go up there." Rick didn't even look up from his screen. "Use the other one." "That one seems to be full as well," Elias noted, glancing across the aisle. Sarah, the flight attendant, materialized instantly. "Not a problem at all, Dr. Thorne. Let me help you." "Sir," she said to Rick, "if you could just place your bag lengthwise, there will be plenty of room for both." Rick huffed, annoyed at the interruption. He stood, roughly adjusted his bag and sat back down, pointedly putting his headphones on. Dr. Thorne gave Sarah a grateful smile. "You are very kind. Thank you." He settled into his seat, 1C, across the aisle from Rick. He pulled out his book, declining the offer of pre-departure champagne. He asked only for a glass of water. Rick glanced over, his upper lip curling in a faint sneer. He saw the simple clothes, the polite, "No thank you," to the champagne, the request for plain water. His mind, conditioned by a decade of cutthroat sales and a shallow definition of success, had already run its own algorithm. The result was a simple, damning calculation. This man didn't belong. The cabin doors were sealed, and the aircraft began its slow, lumbering pushback from the gate. Rick Stanton was already on his second glass of champagne, his laptop open to a PowerPoint presentation emblazoned with the Navicore logo. The title slide read, "Hyperroute, the future of global logistics, a prescient model." He was muttering to himself, rehearsing his lines. "It's not just predictive, it's prescient. We don't just react to traffic, we anticipate supply chain bottlenecks before they form. We are monetizing the future." Across the aisle, Dr. Elias Thorne was absorbed in his reading. He had switched from his book to a bound stack of papers. It was a dissertation from a promising student at Caltech, and the math was, to his delight, extremely elegant. As the plane reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, the "Fasten Seatbelt" sign pinged off. Sarah and her team began their dance of service, their movements practiced and discreet. "Mr. Stanton, another champagne." "Yeah, keep 'em coming," Rick said, not looking up. "And I'll take the steak. Rare. As rare as you can make it." "Dr. Thorne," Sarah asked, her voice softer, "can I get you something to drink before dinner? A wine, perhaps?" Elias looked up, his eyes taking a second to refocus from the dense equations. "Oh, that's very kind. Perhaps just a sparkling water? With a piece of lime, if you have it. And I believe I pre-ordered the salmon." "Of course, Doctor." Rick overheard the exchange. Sparkling water. Salmon. Old man food. His brain was a finely tuned instrument for snap judgments, and every new piece of data confirmed his initial bias. He felt a strange, proprietary anger. First class was his space. It was the sanctuary he paid for, a place where he was supposed to be surrounded by his people, fellow executives, celebrities, people who mattered. This old man, with his water and his quiet politeness, felt like an intruder. A bug in the system. An hour into the flight, Rick was 4 glasses of champagne in, and the alcohol had dissolved his already thin filter of social decency. He was feeling bold, successful, and deeply, profoundly annoyed. He needed to stretch his legs. He stood up abruptly, just as Dr. Thorne was leaning down to retrieve a pen from his satchel. Rick, not bothering to look, stepped back from his seat and collided hard with Elias's shoulder, sending the older man back into his seat with a jolt. "Whoa! Hey! Watch it!" Rick snapped, his words slightly slurred. Elias rubbed his shoulder, his brow furrowed in pain, but his voice remained even. "My apologies. I was just reaching for my pen." "Yeah, well, you should be more aware of your surroundings," Rick said, looming over him. "This is a busy aisle." Sarah, who was in the galley, saw the interaction and began to move toward them. Elias looked up at Rick. He had seen this look before. The casual arrogance, the unearned disdain. He had seen it in boardrooms in the 1980s, in university faculty lounges in the 1990s, and he was seeing it now in the face of a man young enough to be his grandson. "I will endeavor to be more careful, sir," Elias said, his voice cold. The politeness, the lack of a "sir, yes, sir" deference, enraged Rick. He wasn't being shown the respect his watch and his seat number demanded. "You know," Rick said, leaning down, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, ugly whisper that was still loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "I'm just curious. How'd you swing this? Did you use all your frequent flyer miles? Must have taken you decades to save them up." Elias Thorne closed his dissertation. He placed his hands, one over the other, on top of the cover. "Sir, I do not believe my travel accommodations are any of your concern." "Oh, it's my concern," Rick shot back, the champagne fizzing in his brain. "When I pay $5,000 for a ticket, I expect a certain standard, a certain clientele. Not people who look like they're on a day pass from the public library." A woman in seat 2B, Annabelle, who looked to be in her 60s and was wearing a string of very real pearls, lowered her Financial Times to watch. "Sir!" Sarah had arrived. "Is there a problem?" Rick turned on her. "The problem is that I'm trying to work, and this guy is... well, look at him. Are you sure he's in the right seat? Did you check his ticket?" Economy is that way. He pointed a thick, manicured finger toward the curtain that separated the classes. The cabin went silent. The hum of the engine seemed to fade, replaced by a thick, suffocating tension. Elias Thorne's eyes, which had been patient and weary, now hardened. But he did not raise his voice. He did not move. He simply held Rick's gaze. "Mr. Stanton," Sarah said, her voice dropping all pretense of warmth. It was now pure, cold professionalism. "Dr. Thorne is a ticketed first-class passenger. You have created a disturbance. I need you to return to your seat. Now." Rick, emboldened, held his ground. "I'm just saying. It's a valid question. They must be getting really desperate for loyalty members, letting just about anyone up here." And then he delivered the line, the one that would echo. He looked directly at Dr. Thorne. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude, old man," he said, using the term like a slur. "But let's be honest. Guys like you just can't afford this. It's okay. There's no shame in it. But this section is for people who have earned it. People who build things." Dr. Elias Thorne finally spoke. His voice was no louder than a whisper, but it cut through the cabin like a scalpel. "And what is it? You build?" Rick laughed, a short barking sound. "Me? I build the future. I run the entire East Coast sales division for Navicore Solutions. We make the navigation systems that, frankly, probably got this very plane off the ground. We are the architects of where. So yeah, I've earned my seat." He gestured around, as if he owned the cabin, the plane, the very air they were breathing. "You," he said, with a final dismissive wave, "are just taking up space." The silence that followed Rick's proclamation was heavy and absolute. Even the clinking of glasses from the galley had stopped. Sarah, the flight attendant, stepped physically between the two men. Her body language was no longer that of a hostess. It was that of a security guard. "Mr. Stanton," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "This is your final warning. Sit down in your seat and do not speak to Dr. Thorne again. If you violate that instruction, I will have the captain divert this plane to Chicago, and you will be met by law enforcement. Do you understand me?" Rick's champagne-fueled bravado finally hit a wall. The words law enforcement and divert punctured his bubble of self-importance. He knew, dimly, that such an incident would be a black mark. It would get back to his boss, Harrington. It would jeopardize the New York deal. He glared at Sarah, then shot a final, poisonous look at Elias. "Fine," he spat. He flopped back into 1A, yanking his headphones over his ears and turning his back to the aisle. He aggressively motioned for another drink, which Sarah pointedly ignored. The spell was broken. The cabin slowly returned to life, but the atmosphere was ruined. The woman with the pearls, Annabelle, leaned across the aisle from her seat, 2D, toward Elias. "Are you all right, dear?" she whispered. "That man is a pig." Elias looked at her, and the facade of icy composure cracked for just a moment. A deep, profound weariness settled over his features. His hand, resting on his papers, was trembling slightly. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even, at his core, angry. He was just tired. Tired of having to prove he belonged in spaces he had, by any metric, earned the right to be in. "I am fine, thank you," he whispered back, offering a small, sad smile. "Ignorance, I find, is often louder than wisdom." Annabelle nodded, a look of grim understanding on her face. "Well said. Don't you let him bother you." The rest of the flight, another 4 hours, was a long, simmering torture. Rick, stewing in his seat, drank 2 more glasses of champagne, which were delivered with silent, icy disapproval by the other flight attendant. He was furious. He was embarrassed. He'd been dressed down by a flight attendant. He blamed Dr. Thorne entirely. He began to furiously type on his laptop, not at his presentation, but in a group chat with his sales team. Rick S. "You will not believe the affirmative action case they sat next to me in 1C. Guy literally looks homeless. Flight attendant defended him. Unbelievable. This country." He then switched to his email, trying to refocus. He had to land this deal. His boss, Mr. Harrington, was a tough, old-school executive who didn't care about excuses. He only cared about results. The deal with the logistics conglomerate, Global Logics, was worth a potential $50 million in licensing over 5 years. It was Rick's white whale. He reread an email from Harrington. "Rick, the Global Logics R&D team is flying in for this. They're the real decision-makers. Don't just give them the gloss, they need the substance. Their lead engineer, a Dr. Peters, is apparently a shark. Don't get cute." Rick snorted. "Dr. Peters, another academic? He'd handle her. He'd handle all of them. He was Rick Stanton. He closed deals." Across the aisle, Dr. Thorne had put his papers away. He couldn't focus. The words, "Guys like you can't afford this," kept replaying in his mind. He wasn't thinking about the $5,000 for the seat. He was thinking about the price he had actually paid. He was thinking about 1978 at the MIT Lincoln Laboratory, when he was the only black face in a room of 50 engineers, all of them trying to solve the problem of signal correction for a crazy idea the military had. He was thinking about 1982 when he published his first paper on the Thorne-Banning equations, a complex set of algorithms that accounted for ionospheric and tropospheric signal delay, effectively making high-precision targeting possible. His co-author, Dr. Banning, got a partnership at a major consulting firm. Elias got a polite golf clap and a tenure-track position. He was thinking about 1993 when the system went public, and a dozen companies took his publicly funded, unpatented algorithms and built billion-dollar empires on them. Companies just like Navicore. He wasn't traveling to New York for a vacation. He was the keynote speaker at the annual Institute of Navigation Gala, where he was receiving the Johannes Kepler Award, a lifetime achievement honor. The innovator of the century was what the press release called it. He sighed, closing his eyes. The architect of where, as Rick had so proudly claimed to be. Elias Thorne had laid the foundation. He'd dug the cellar, poured the concrete, and drawn the blueprints. Rick Stanton had just sold the tacky lawn ornaments. The humiliation on the plane was a familiar, bitter taste. It was the tax he had paid his entire life for being brilliant while black. As the plane began its initial descent into the crowded airspace over New York, a new passenger entered the unfolding drama. Seated in 2A, directly behind Rick, was a young man named David Chen. David was in his late 20s, a postgraduate student at Caltech, and he was flying to New York to present at a small symposium on advanced signal processing. He was nervous, brilliant, and for the entire flight had been alternating between reviewing his notes and staring at the man in 1C. He hadn't been able to believe it at first. He thought he was just an old man who looked like him. But the way he held his papers, the way he'd been treated by the man in 1A, David had been building up his courage for 4 hours. As the plane's flaps deployed with a hydraulic groan, David decided to act. He leaned forward, past the dividing wall. Rick was asleep, his mouth open, snoring lightly. David focused on Dr. Thorne. "Excuse me," David whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I don't mean to bother you, sir." Elias Thorne opened his eyes. He saw the young, earnest face, the nervous energy. He nodded. "It's no bother, son." David's eyes darted to the bound dissertation on Elias's lap, which he had just closed. Is that Dr. Liu's new paper on tropospheric scintillation?" Elias looked surprised. "Why, yes, it is. The math is very promising." David's face lit up with a giddy, unrestrained joy. "I knew it. Oh my God. You are Dr. Elias Thorne, aren't you?" Elias offered a small, tired smile. "I am. I'm David Chen. I'm a postgraduate at Caltech. My thesis advisor is Dr. Aris Papandropoulos," David stammered. "Aris?" Elias's smile widened for the first time on the flight. "He was one of my most difficult students. A brilliant mind. Stubborn as a mule. How is he?" "He's great. He's the one who told me to read your papers. Sir, I just have to say, your 1982 paper, Correcting for Ionospheric Distortion in Tri-Signal Ranging. It's foundational. It's everything." David was gushing now, the words tumbling out. We still use the Thorne-Banning equations. We just call them the TB codes. My entire thesis, my work on secure signal downlinking, it's all built on your algorithms." The sound of gushing, nerdy praise had woken Rick Stanton. He pulled off his headphones, his eyes bleary and red. "What the hell? Can you keep it down? People are trying to sleep." David, fueled by academic adrenaline, didn't even register him. "I'm so sorry for what that man said to you," he said, gesturing at Rick. It's disgusting." Rick's head snapped around. "What did you say, kid?" David looked at Rick with pure, unadulterated contempt. "I said you're disgusting. You spent this whole flight bragging about your Navi Corps company, and you just insulted the man who made it possible." Rick's confusion was absolute. He looked from David to Elias and back again. "What are you talking about? I insulted a college professor." David let out a laugh, a sharp, bitter sound. "A college professor? This is Dr. Elias Thorne. He didn't just go to MIT. They named a wing of the Lincoln Lab after him. The TB codes, the math that your company's entire platform is built on. The T stands for Thorne." The blood drained from Rick's face. He looked at Elias, who was just quietly watching. "No," Rick said. But the word held no conviction. "No. Our tech is proprietary. We have hundreds of engineers. We built it." David shook his head, his face a picture of pity. "You built a user interface. You built a pretty box and you put his life's work inside it. You're selling a product you don't even understand." The plane's wheels touched down on the tarmac at JFK with a hard jolt. The landing was rough, mirroring the sudden, violent crash of Rick Stanton's reality. "Whatever, kid," Rick stammered, his bravado completely shattered, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. "What do you know?" He fumbled to gather his things, his hands shaking. He wouldn't look at 1C. He wouldn't look at the man he had berated. The plane taxied to the gate. The moment the seatbelt sign switched off, Rick Stanton was on his feet. He grabbed his bag, nearly shoving Annabelle, the woman with the pearls, in his haste. "Sir, the gate is not yet—" Sarah, the flight attendant, began. "Shut up!" Rick snapped. He pushed his way to the front, a man desperate to escape. He was the first one off the plane, running down the jet bridge as if the furies of hell were at his heels. Dr. Elias Thorne watched him go. David Chen, behind him, said, What an awful man." Elias Thorne slowly gathered his satchel and his papers. He stood up, smoothing his blazer. He looked at David, his eyes full of a wisdom that went far beyond signal processing. "He is not an awful man, son," Elias said, as they began to move into the aisle. "He is just a hollow one. And one day, the world always finds a way to see what's inside." The boardroom at Global Logics was on the 58th floor of a new, blade-thin skyscraper in Hudson Yards. The view was, by any definition, magnificent. It looked out over the Hudson River, a god's-eye view of the city's circulatory system of ferries, bridges, and traffic. Rick Stanton, however, was not enjoying the view. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, but his gaze was turned inward, replaying the scene on the plane. The T stands for Thorne. It had to be a coincidence. A different Thorne. It had to be. He had run a frantic, shaky Google search in the back of his Uber. Elias Thorne, MIT, navigation. The results had made him physically ill. Forbes, the quiet architect, how Elias Thorne's 1980s math rules your 2020s world. The Institute of Navigation, announcing our 2025 Kepler Award winner, Dr. Elias Thorne. MIT Technology Review, The Unsung Hero of GPS, a conversation with Elias Thorne. He was going to be sick. He had just spent an hour berating, humiliating, and challenging the credentials of the founding father of his entire industry. "Stanton!" Rick jumped, splashing a bit of his coffee onto his hand. Mr. Harrington, his boss, had arrived. Harrington was a man in his late 60s, a relic from the greed is good era who had somehow survived it. He was all sharp angles, silver hair, and ruthless pragmatism. "You look like hell, Rick," Harrington said, not as a greeting, but as an indictment. "Hungover?" "No, sir." "Rough flight," Rick mumbled, wiping his hand on a napkin. "Just turbulence." "Right," Harrington said, clearly not believing him. "Well, pull it together. I told you these are not your usual clients. The Global Logics R&D team is here. This isn't a sales pitch. It's a dissertation defense. Their lead engineer, this Dr. Peters, she's the one you have to convince. She's the gatekeeper. The CEO, Chen, he just signs what she tells him to. Right. Dr. Peters. I'm on it, Mr. Harrington. I've got the hyper-root deck queued up. They're going to love the prescient model. Save it, Rick. Just don't be you. Don't be the slick salesman. Be the tech guy you're supposed to be. Be the VP of Solutions. Understand? Yes, sir. Rick's heart was hammering. Be the tech guy. He was a sales guy. He knew the buzzwords, not the foundations. He knew the what, not the how. And the man who invented the how was somewhere in this same city, probably laughing at him. The conference room door opened. In walked the Global Logics team. At the head was a tall, imposing man in a severe suit. This was Mr. Chen, the CEO. But all eyes, especially Harrington's, were on the woman next to him. She was in her late 40s, with a no-nonsense haircut and a sharp, penetrating gaze. She wore a simple, dark blue dress and no-nonsense glasses. She carried a tablet and looked like she hadn't smiled since 2005. Mr. Harrington, Mr. Stanton, Chen said. This is our Chief Technical Officer and Head of R&D, Dr. Evelyn Peters. A pleasure, Harrington said, oozing charm. Dr. Peters just nodded. Gentlemen, I've read your white paper. I have questions. Of course, Rick said, trying to find his sales voice. We're here to answer them. They all took their seats around the massive obsidian table. Rick queued up his presentation on the 80-inch screen. The Navicore logo filled the room. Welcome, Rick began, his voice a little shaky. We're here today to talk about the future. Hyperroot. It's not just a new software. It's a new paradigm. It's a prescient model. Stop, Dr. Peters said. Rick froze. He was on slide 1. Just stop, she said, holding up a hand. I don't need the gloss, Mr. Stanton. I read the marketing materials. Let's jump to the core algorithm. Your white paper claims hyperroot can predict logistical snarls 72 hours in advance by modeling, and I quote, all adjacent signal and human vectors. That's correct, Rick said, puffing up slightly. It's an AI-driven, it's a buzzword. Dr. Peters cut in, her voice flat. My team ran a simulation based on the limited API you provided. Your system has a flaw, a critical one. Harrington shot Rick a look. Why didn't you tell me this look? That's not possible, Rick stammered. Our engineers. Your engineers, Dr. Peters said, have a problem at high latitudes. We ran a test case for our Anchorage to Oslo shipping lane. Your hyper-route system was off, not by a little, by 2.8 nautical miles. Do you know what 2.8 nautical miles of error means, Mr. Stanton? It means my icebreaker is plowing into a protected reef instead of a shipping channel. It means my medical supplies are landing in a fjord instead of a hospital. She tapped her tablet, and Rick's beautiful presentation was replaced by a terrifying screen of raw data. A red line, Global Logics' current route, and a green, wavering line, Navicore's hyperroute, that was veering wildly off course. It's a minor patch, Rick said, his throat dry. It's signal decay. We can boost the signal. It's not signal decay, Dr. Peters snapped, and for the first time, there was real anger in her voice. It's relativistic drift. Your system is not properly accounting for the relativistic effects of time dilation on the satellite constellation itself. It's a basic, fundamental error. Your system is treating time as a constant. It's high school physics, Mr. Stanton. Frankly, I'm insulted you wasted my time. Rick was speechless. He had no idea what she was talking about. Relativistic drift? Mr. Harrington put his head in his hands. The $50 million deal was evaporating. Evelyn, Mr. Chen, the CEO, said softly. Perhaps they can fix it. Fix it. Dr. Peters laughed, a cold, sharp sound. This isn't a bug. This is a flawed foundation. They'd have to rebuild their entire core algorithm from the ground up. I'm sorry, Mr. Harrington. Your product is a very pretty toy. But we're a serious company. She was gathering her things. The meeting was over. It had lasted 7 minutes. Rick was in a cold sweat. His career was flashing before his eyes. He had to do something. Wait, he said. Please, Dr. Peters, we can bring in our top engineers. We can consult with the best. We can get anyone. Dr. Peters paused at the door. The best? Mr. Stanton. The people who could fix this. They don't work for companies like Navicore. They're in labs. They're in universities. They're the people who write the textbooks, not the people who sell the Spark notes. Just then, Mr. Chen's personal assistant opened the door. Sir, the assistant said, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but he's here. He's early. We've put him in the R&D briefing room. Mr. Chen's whole demeanor changed. He stood up straight, a genuine smile breaking out on his face. He's here? Wonderful. Evelyn, our guest has arrived. He has. Dr. Peters was suddenly, visibly excited. The cold shark was gone, replaced by an almost giddy engineer. He's really here? Yes. And he's agreed to speak with your team before the gala tonight, Chen said. He turned back to Harrington and Rick, his professionalism returning. Gentlemen, I'm sorry this didn't work out. My assistant will validate your parking. Wait, Harrington said, desperate. Who? Who's here? Maybe we know them. We have connections at MIT, at Caltech. Mr. Chen smiled, a thin corporate smile. I doubt it, Mr. Harrington. This is someone on a different level. We are incredibly privileged to have him. He's the man who's receiving the Kepler Award tonight, the innovator of the century. Chen stepped aside as the assistant held the door open. We flew him in from San Francisco this morning, first class, of course, Chen said, beaming. Gentlemen, I don't believe you know him, but please, on your way out, show your respects to Dr. Elias Thorne. The name hit the room like a physical blow. Mr. Harrington, who had been in the industry for 40 years, froze. He knew the name. Everyone knew the name. It was whispered in the same reverent tones as Einstein or Bohr in a physics lab. Thorne was a legend, a ghost, the man who wrote the original code. He turned to look at Rick, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified realization. Rick Stanton, however, didn't move. He couldn't. His blood had been replaced with ice water. His limbs were locked. The air in his lungs had turned to cement. Through the doorway, down the hall, he could see him. Dr. Elias Thorne was standing in the R&D briefing room, which was really just a large, open-plan space with whiteboards. He was no longer in his simple traveler's clothes. He wore a dark, perfectly cut charcoal suit, a simple blue tie, and a crisp white shirt. He looked rested, powerful, and, to Rick's terrified mind, about 10 feet tall. He was in mid-conversation with a young engineer who was listening with rapt attention. Dr. Thorne, Mr. Chen said, bustling out of the boardroom. What a pleasure. Welcome to Global Logics. Elias turned, a warm, professional smile on his face. Mr. Chen, a privilege. Your offices are impressive. The view is quite something. We try, Chen beamed. And this, he said, is the woman who has been dying to meet you, our CTO, Dr. Evelyn Peters. Elias's smile widened. He reached out to shake her hand. Dr. Peters, I have read your work on cryo-cooled signal amplification. It is inspired. Dr. Peters, the shark, who had just moments ago torn Rick to pieces, blushed. She physically blushed. Dr. Thorne, I can't believe I'm meeting you. Your 1982 paper is, well, it's my Bible. Please, Elias said. You'll make an old man vain. I am just a plumber who got lucky with the pipes. You are the man who designed the plumbing, she said, with reverence. It was at this moment that Elias's gaze drifted past Chen and Peters toward the boardroom he had just walked past, and his eyes met Rick Stanton's. He didn't start. He didn't gasp. His smile didn't even waver. He simply recognized him. A flicker of, was it pity? No, just recognition. Ah, Dr. Thorne said, his voice carrying in the quiet hall. Mr. Stanton, what a coincidence. The entire group, Chen, Peters, Harrington, and the assistants, all turned. Rick felt like an insect pinned to a board. Mr. Harrington, a born survivor, immediately sensed a catastrophe. He stepped forward, trying to run damage control on a problem he didn't even understand. Dr. Thorne, sir, an honor, an absolute honor. I'm Robert Harrington, CEO of Navicor, and this is my VP, Rick Stanton. You two know each other? Elias's gaze was level. We met. Yes. We flew in together from San Francisco this morning. Wonderful, Chen boomed. You see, Rick, we travel in the same circles. Rick and his team are here to sell us on their hyperroute system. Dr. Thorne's eyebrows raised, just a fraction. Hyperroute, is that what you're calling it? Interesting. He looked at Rick, who was completely white, shaking. Mr. Stanton was very vocal on the flight. Harrington's blood ran cold. Vocal? How so? Elias turned his full attention to Harrington. The warmth was gone. His voice was not angry. It was just precise. A physicist stating an observation. Your vice president was concerned about my presence in the first-class cabin, Elias said. He was, I believe, convinced that I was out of my element. He was very worried that I had not earned the right to be there. Dr. Peters gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Chen's face turned to stone. He suggested, Elias continued, his voice quiet but echoing in the marble hall, that guys like me can't afford such things. He suggested it was an affirmative action upgrade. He was, all in all, a most unpleasant traveling companion. Silence. The only sound was the distant whir of the building's ventilation system. Harrington looked at Rick. His face was a mask of cold, unadulterated fury. Rick, he whispered. Rick finally found his voice. It was a pathetic, reedy squeak. It was a misunderstanding. I was drinking. I didn't know. You didn't know, Elias repeated softly. He took a step toward Rick. He was just an old man in a suit, but he suddenly had the gravity of a planet. You didn't know who I was, Elias stated. That is what you mean, isn't it? You are not apologizing for what you did. You are apologizing because you did it to me. He looked at Harrington. Your VP is not just a bigot, Mr. Harrington. He is a fool. He is a man who sells a product he does not understand, built on principles he cannot comprehend. He glanced at Dr. Peters. Doctor, your problem with their system, at high latitudes, it's relativistic drift, is it not? Dr. Peters just nodded, mesmerized. Yes, Elias said, a sad smile playing on his lips. It always is. Your VP, he said to Harrington, dismissed my life's work as a useless academic theory just before we landed. He then looked at Rick. And you called yourself the architect of where? What a clumsy turn of phrase. Elias turned to Dr. Peters. Now, Doctor, About that drift. The problem with the off-the-shelf TB codes is that they assume a constant, low-latitude orbital path. But if you are routing near the poles, you must apply a second-order correction for the satellite's own temporal variance. It's a simple matter of time dilation. Do you have a whiteboard? He and Dr. Peters walked into the R&D room, arm in arm, as she said, We have 20 whiteboards, Dr. Thorne." They left Rick Stanton, Mr. Harrington, and Mr. Chen in the hallway. Mr. Chen, the CEO, let the silence hang for a full 10 seconds. He then turned to Mr. Harrington. "Mr. Harrington," Chen said, his voice so cold it could have frozen helium. "This meeting is over. Any potential this company ever had of ever doing business with Global Logics is over. I will not have my company, my engineers, or my guest, a man I revere, associated with this filth." He pointed to Rick. "Or this ignorant bigotry." He turned to Harrington. "And frankly, your technology is, as Dr. Thorne pointed out, fundamentally flawed. Get out of my building." Robert Harrington did not say a word in the elevator. The ride down from the 58th floor was a long, cold, silent drop. The car was all polished steel and dark, reflective glass, and Rick Stanton was forced to stare at his own pathetic reflection. He saw a man in a $5,000 Brioni suit, his face the color of old oatmeal, his eyes wide with a terror that was only just beginning to calcify. Rick's mind, a salesman's mind, was scrambling. It was running calculations, trying to find an angle, a leverage point, a way to spin this. It was a misunderstanding, a bad joke. I was drunk. He can't fire me. I'm his top guy. I bring in 40% of the East Coast revenue. Harrington needs me. Beside him, Harrington was unnervingly still. He wasn't red-faced. He wasn't fuming. He was calm. It was the calm of an exterminator who had just located the nest. He was simply an algorithm processing a fatal error. And Rick was the error. The digital display above the door marked their descent, a reverse countdown to Rick's execution. 50, 45, 30, 15. The doors pinged open. The sound was offensively loud in the cavernous, tomb-like lobby. The air was cool and smelled of marble and expensive, abstract floral arrangements. Harrington walked out, his footsteps sharp and decisive on the polished stone. He walked 10 paces toward the massive, revolving glass doors, then stopped, his back to Rick. He stood there for a full 10 seconds. Rick, his legs feeling like bags of wet cement, stumbled out after him. A security guard at a large granite desk watched them, his expression one of pure, professional boredom. "Robert, Mr. Harrington, Rick began, his voice a pathetic, reedy squeak. "Look, I know what that looked like. But I can fix this. I'll go back up there. I'll apologize. I'll write him a letter. I'll donate to his college. Harrington turned around, very slowly. His face was a mask of cold, unadulterated fury, but his voice was chillingly quiet. "You," he said, "are fired." The words hung in the vast, echoing space. They were so simple, so absolute. "What?" Rick laughed, a hysterical barking sound. "No, Robert, you can't be serious. Fired? For what? For a misunderstanding? I didn't know who he was." "That," Harrington said, and his voice finally rose. Not to a shout, but to a concentrated, venomous hiss that cut through the lobby's quiet hum. "Is the problem." He took a step closer, and Rick instinctively flinched. "You are the Senior Vice President of Global Solutions for a navigation technology company," Harrington whispered, "and you did not know the name Elias Thorne." "But how could I? He's just some scientist." "He's not some scientist, you absolute moron." Harrington's composure finally cracked, his face twisting in disgust. He is the T in the TB equations. He is the man who wrote the foundational code for signal correction. We, Navicorps, pay a 7-figure license fee every single year to MIT for a block of patents that are, in effect, his life's work. Patents he donated to the university. You didn't just insult a passenger, Rick. You didn't just insult a black man. You just insulted our own source code. He poked Rick hard in the chest. You stood there and you bragged about your hyper-route system, a system that, as Dr. Peters so helpfully pointed out, doesn't even work. And you did it in front of the one man on Earth who could have fixed it. The one man who... Jesus Christ. Harrington turned away, running a hand over his silver hair, as if trying to wipe away the contamination. Robert, please, Rick said, his voice breaking. He was pleading now. The salesman was gone, replaced by a terrified child. It's a $50 million deal. I can save it. I'll call Chen. You, Harrington interrupted, turning back, are a walking nuclear liability. You cost us global logics. You cost us any future business with global logics. And when this story gets out, and it will get out, you will have made this entire company a pariah. You have tainted a billion-dollar brand because you couldn't control your stupid, arrogant, prejudiced mouth. I don't care what you are, Harrington snapped. I care what you cost me, and today you're a write-off, an unrecoverable loss. He pulled out his own phone. He typed a single text, his thumb moving with brutal efficiency. Your corporate accounts are frozen. Your company Amex is cancelled. Your access to the server is revoked. Your laptop is now a brick. Your keycard for the building won't work. By the time you get home, the locks on your corporate apartment will have been changed. Rick's mouth fell open. You can't. My things. Our lawyers will be in touch with your lawyers, assuming you can afford any, to arrange the return of your personal effects. You will be held in breach of your contract for gross misconduct and moral turpitude, which means you forfeit your bonus, your stock options, and any and all severance. You are not to contact any employee of Navicorps. You are not to speak of this to anyone in the press. If you do, our legal team will bury you so deep in litigation, your grandchildren will be paying the bills. You are a ghost, Rick. As of right now. Harrington's phone buzzed. He looked at it. And your car service is cancelled. Have a nice walk to the subway. He adjusted his tie, his demeanor once again calm, his task complete. You have a very expensive watch, Rick. You built your whole personality on it. I suggest you sell it. You're going to need the money. Now get out of my sight. Get out of my building. Harrington turned and walked briskly, not looking back. The revolving doors spun and he was gone. Rick stood alone in the center of the marble floor for a full minute. The security guard was openly watching him now, a small, knowing smirk on his face. You need to leave, sir, the guard said, his voice bored. Sir. The word was a slap. He was no longer Mr. Stanton. He was just, Sir. Rick stumbled, his legs clumsy, toward the doors. He pushed through into the harsh, bright afternoon of Hudson Yards. The noise of the city, the sirens, the traffic, the construction, hit him like a physical blow. He was unemployed. He was ruined. He was nothing. He was in a daze. He needed a car. He pulled out his top-of-the-line smartphone, a gift from Navicorps. He'd call an Uber. He opened the app, his corporate card, the default payment method invalid. He tried to switch it to his personal debit card. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely type. I'll call Greg, my sales team. They'll know what to do. He hit the contact for Greg, team lead. The call didn't even ring. A sterile, computerized voice. The number you are trying to reach has been disconnected. He tried to open his Navicore email app to send a desperate, pleading message. A red-lettered error message filled the screen. Access denied. Your credentials have been revoked. Harrington hadn't been bluffing. He had been erased in less than 5 minutes. He let out a strangled sob, leaning against the cold glass of the skyscraper. He looked down at his phone, his lifeline, his symbol of power. He was trying to figure out where the nearest subway station was. He opened the map. He stared at the screen, the little blue dot. It pulsed, calmly, accurately, showing his exact location. You are here. It was finding him. Richard Stanton, a single, pathetic, lost speck on a crowded sidewalk. The signal was beaming down from satellites in orbit, traveling at the speed of light. It was being corrected for ionospheric drag, for tropospheric delay, for relativistic drift. It was being corrected by the Thorne-Banning equations. The system was working perfectly. He, the self-proclaimed architect of where, was completely, hopelessly lost. And the only thing in the universe that knew his place was the life's work of the man he had tried to destroy. 1 year later, the headline on the MIT Technology Review website was glowing. Global Logics and Thorne Institute announce $100 million STEM scholarship. The article featured a picture of Dr. Elias Thorne, his arm around a beaming Dr. Evelyn Peters. After the incident, a profoundly apologetic Mr. Chen had not only given Dr. Thorne a tour, but had also made a historic donation to the institute Dr. Thorne had founded. Global Logics, using a new, custom-built core algorithm designed with Dr. Thorne's direct consultation, had seen its profits triple. They were now the undisputed global leader in logistics. Dr. Thorne, who had refused any personal payment, had directed all of his massive consulting fees into the new scholarship fund, specifically for underrepresented youth in STEM. "We must not only build the future," his quote read, "we must ensure everyone has a chance to be its architect." Thousands of miles away, in a grey, fabric-walled cubicle at a third-rate data entry firm in suburban New Jersey, a man named Rich Stanton sighed. He was no longer Rick. Rick had been a salesman. Rich was a data processor. His name had become a verb in the tech world. To pull a Stanton was to be fired in a way so spectacularly idiotic, so public, and so complete that you were rendered unemployable. He was a ghost. His Audemars Piguet was long gone, sold for pennies on the dollar to make his first 6 months of rent. His Brioni suits were in a trash bag somewhere. He now wore a frayed, polyester blend shirt and a cheap clip-on tie. His job was, fundamentally, to check if the ship to address was the same as the bill to address. All day. 8 hours a day. A new invoice popped up on his ancient, flickering monitor. He stared at it, his eyes dead. He took a sip of his lukewarm, bitter coffee from a stained mug. He picked up his cheap, prepaid phone. He opened the map. He did this 20, 30 times a day. He just watched the little blue dot. He watched it. This tiny piece of magic. This ghost of Elias Thorne, pulsing on his screen. It was the only thing in his life that was accurate. It was the only thing that worked. It was a constant, humiliating reminder of the vast, complex, brilliant system he had been too arrogant to see and too small to ever be a part of. And that was the hard, cold, and perfectly calculated karma of gravity. And that, folks, is what we call hard karma. Rick Stanton didn't just lose a deal, he lost his reality. He built his identity on a foundation of arrogance, and it took one quiet, brilliant man to show him it was all built on sand. Dr. Elias Thorne, on the other hand, did what he always did. He quietly, brilliantly, made the world a better, more accurate place. This is a reminder that the world is full of giants. Some are loud, like Rick, but the most important ones, the ones who really change the world, are often quiet. They're the ones sitting next to you, the ones you might overlook. Be kind. Be curious. You never know if the person you're dismissing is the one who drew the map you're standing on. What did you think of Rick's karma? Was it deserved? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love stories where arrogance meets its match, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true life stories of karma and justice. We'll see you in the next one.